evening. Welcome to the Diablo 3 podcast. We are online at Diablo II.net, and I almost said the wrong URL again because we changed, and I don't like change, unlike a certain president of ours. On the show tonight, joining me is Xanth.
Ahoy, hoy.
Who's been busy dying on the PTR and re-importing his account and dying again. Or perhaps not. Maybe later tonight, though. Also joining me is a guest who hasn't been on here for a while, months and months, right? Empty one?
Yeah, it's been like the entire school year, strangely.
We don't mention school here because this is where we come to get away from school because, like, school's out for summer, man.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And you've been busy grading your finals with a flip of a coin, right? So you're ready to roll?
No finals in my grade.
Heads they fail, tails you win. You like them so much, you want to see them again next year. So that's what summer school's for. So we are talking about the first big content patch on the PTR for patch 2.3 came out this week, and they basically redid all the Witch Doctor stuff because it wasn't good enough. Both of my guests have been playing some Witch Doctors. I have not because who do voodoo? You do voodoo. I know do voodoo. That was an old song, by the way. But they are both like super Witch Doctor experts and can tell us all the new stuff and some of the other patch changes that went on. And we're going to make fun of esports athletes. I'm doing air quotes. Athletes. But they're pretty pumped from using the mouse, though, right?
Yeah, one arm.
Let's see what else we got on here. The first guy who ever hit Paragon 2000, at least he would have if the season had ended today, and he's revealing some flaws in the system with the whole thing. We can talk about that a little bit. And then we can pretend that we are excited about Gamescom, BlizzCon, Diablo 3 press conference, Gamescom Blizzard press conference. And we can make some more fun and make fun of esports athletes some more because they're all fat little butt dumplings. And they pretty much live on Mountain Dew. Is that right? Xanth, if you were an esports athlete, would you live on Mountain Dew or cheese?
I'm sure you could combine both, and that way you would get all the protein you need plus all the sugar.
Well, generally Cheetos is the other joke. Have to have that joke. Do Cheetos have any actual cheese content, do you think?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just like orange spray.
Do Cheetos have any actual food content?
Styrofoam spray-painted orange.
It's like,
what
it's
about
like
the
packing
powder?
Material, right?
The powder additive.
Well, there you go. That must be the good part. All the growing body needs. So, first off, where have you been, MT1? What you've been on? When were you last on the podcast? Do you remember? And what have you been doing this season? And why should anyone respect your opinion about Diablo 3?
I feel like I probably was last on the podcast last summer, maybe July. I got pretty busy during the school year teaching and such, but also was unfortunately playing some Destiny, which I'm sure I'll play a little bit when it launches the expansion for that coming up in September. But I always play each season, so I played a little bit of each season, and now as Season 4 is amping up and patch 2.3 is coming out, I got excited and I wanted to play again. And so the reason that you guys should listen to me is because I care a lot about the game. I really want what is best, or at least what I view as best, for the game's future because I love action RPGs. I don't think there's any better genre out there. And right now, this is the king of them. So.
And if not, you will assign them to detention, correct?
Definitely. Got to have fun.
I think our average listener is about the average age of your students, so it's probably right on their wavelength.
I think the kid.
Could you try to use smaller words, please?
Oh, definitely. Sure.
And what have you been up to lately, Xanth? You've been on the podcast for a little while. You've been enjoying your summer vacation and taking a break from molding the malleable minds of America's youth?
Yeah, I've spent a lot of my summer just kind of doing projects here and there, but a good bunch of my time when I can devote to it has been playing Diablo, and a lot of that in the summer has been on the PTR because it seems to be every time a patch or a PTR will come up, it's usually mid-season, and that's when I'll abandon the current season and just jump into the PTR because 9 times out of 10, it's a better experience. And I think this patch is definitely showing that the game is moving in a good direction.
Xanth, who do voodoo?
You do?
No, you do voodoo. Hoodoo? Voodoo. Yes, so you've been playing some Witch Doctor. Had you guys been on the PTR before the last couple of weeks? Do you enjoy Kanai's Cube? We talked about this on the last podcast, of course, but neither of you were on that podcast, so I'm wondering what you think of it. Have you gotten that high of a level in the PTR MT1? Have you gotten the cube? Do you have awesome powers available through it? Have you increased your Greater Rift by 10?
I have indeed. I immediately went and got a Kanai's cube, and then immediately made my first investment into it with my Star Metal Kuriki, because it was non-ancient, so of course couldn't be run as a weapon. So I think that's one of the coolest features of the Kanai's cube, is you can finally have that legendary property you really want in your weapon, but you couldn't get an ancient version of it to save your life. Of course, you're going to need a great ancient in that slot anyway, as your actual weapon, but at least now I can finally use the build that I wanted to use, that I was, restricted from doing before. So in that way, I'm very happy that they added it in.
So before when they first announced the cube, before we actually got to use it, much of the speculation was that the Witch Doctor would be the most improved, because he's so bottlenecked by helms and by weapons. Seems like more than any other class, the helms are really what define the build. And people were constantly saying, can you move some of these powers from the helm to, chest armor or something like that, just to give us some more options. So were you able to instantly jump in and get, infinitely spawning flayers, and they have piercing, what the hell is it called? The voodoo breath, the snake on the face thing?
Oh, yeah, so the piercing, I actually didn't have a dagger of darts yet.
So what did you first do with your Witch Doctor? You copied over your character, right?
Yeah,
so
I copied over a hardcore T6 speed running, I guess, pet Witch Doctor that I had played since launch. And immediately I just started on T8 because I figured it was going to take me a while to get into a game, and it was only a couple of minutes, luckily. And then
benefit of hardcore on the PTR.
Yeah, definitely. And then I went and did Kanai's cube immediately. I did one full game's worth of bounties in order to get those materials, and immediately started using those materials to try and get better items. Didn't really get any better items, surprisingly.
And since you're a Witch Doctor, a full game of bounties was 2.5 hours, right?
It's actually really not that bad. My pets kind of tear through things with. I use a Locust Swarm build, and that debuffs the enemies, and then the pets do all the work.
All those fast movement skills Witch Doctors have, you're able to just fly through stuff.
Well,
right?
I got the extra 30% movement speed, but no, definitely not flying through things. Although the new Hex Angry Chicken Monojuma set allows you to kind of run through stuff at lower difficulties. So that's kind of nice. It makes it so that you are Angry Chicken and you do you turn into a chicken, you run really fast, and then you do a large explosion, which can definitely kill elites at lower difficulties. You're not going to be pushing greater risks with it, though.
You're reminding me of my first honeymoon.
Ooh, yeah. So that was the first thing I did, was get some of those materials, and then I pulled the legendary effects, including the Mask of Joram. So I had the increased 99% damage. It was 100% now. The item I had was 99%, but when I put it into Kanai's cube, 100% increase, and then I actually modified my build to be the Dagger of Darts build, because at T10, when I started playing on there, I was having a lot more difficulty than I would have liked to with my build that I'm running on T6 and speed clearing everything with currently.
So you also jumped on the PTR with Witch Doctor Xanth. Can you tell our listeners who don't play Witch Doctors everything that was wrong about what MT1 just said, and why is he a filthy casual?
No,
or do you agree? Is he awesome?
Well, let's not go that far, but I would kind of echo about the same experience. I have been playing a Dagger of Darts build for a while. So my first experience getting onto the PTR was trying to play with the new sets. I'd already transferred over a good majority of the Helltooth set, so I was able to start working that in, but definitely did not find as much success. In the first iteration on the PTR, Helltooth was really spotty. The goal of it was you would drop down these Wall of Death, and then it would apply necrosis to whatever it had touched, but it was barely hitting anything, and then the damage increase was so minimal that the whole build it really didn't seem to work. And I know myself and a lot of other Witch Doctors during the first iteration of the PTR just ended up going back to the Dagger build, even with the other, with a Rakier set and then the Helltooth set, that neither of them were comparable in damage. So you felt the need to just go back to what you knew was working, which it is a much more enjoyable experience with the cube, but when you're really pigeonholed into really just playing one version, I don't know, it was it was a little disheartening. Whereas now, with the re-itemized sets, it's feeling a lot better, but there's still a little ways to go.
Yeah, it's funny, they totally redid. Health 2 set has been totally useless forever, right? I mean, that's never been useful for a Witch Doctor.
No, not at all. It was kind of a joke of a skill to begin with. It looked really cool when the game was first launched.
And it was Wall of Zombies was the joke of a skill, which looked awesome, but then just wasn't of any use.
No, and the way the game is kind of morphed from where we started, it's really just clearing as quickly as you can, or getting through a greater rift as quickly as you can, and a skill that requires you to sit and wait for it to do something doesn't have as much of a benefit. Where what they're trying to do with the new Wall of Death is make it a little bit more usable, and then in using it, buff the skills that are incorporated into it, which is beneficial. But at the same time, taking a skill that one of the common complaints I've seen is you might be able to do a huge amount of damage, but you'll be next to a demon hunter who really only has to push one or two buttons and is clearing the whole area while you're kind of waiting.
Yeah, every other class in the game having a full screen AoE that they can use while moving at full speed was kind of a drawback to being a Witch Doctor.
Right.
Just slightly. It is funny that the PTR started with 2.30, and they totally redesigned Helltooth set, and everybody tried it and said, this still sucks, and the next patch comes out, and the first thing says, Helltooth set has been redesigned. Subtly stated, like every single property has been changed on it again. Because making games is hard, apparently. And the complaints that people said a lot were you had to cast like multiple skills to kind of get your maximum buff going, but then monsters in the middle of the zombie circle wouldn't even take damage.
Exactly right. Yeah, it's a ring.
And you were really squishy, right? If you were close to stuff to use your skills, but if you were too close, you took a lot of damage. So the new one, they made the Circle of Death better, and they made you have 50% reduced damage when you use it, and other stuff. The dots last longer, effect stacks, etc. So have you tried the new one, empty one?
Yeah, that's actually the only one I tried because I only got on the PTR fairly recently, and I had that set sitting to the side.
And after the 7-hour queue, it was time to go to work.
Yeah, I had that set aside in my chest already, with fairly decent ancient pieces, even though it wasn't what I was currently using on the character, just in case. And I was having fun with it because it's easy to sustain the increased damage with your spender, because it's easy to drop your 3 stacks of the Wall of Death. But the issue comes from the fact that the Wall of Death really doesn't do much, whereas the Demon Hunter has Reign of Vengeance in the Natalia set, and it does massive damage right where you point it. The Wall of Death goes around the thing, and is supposed to slow them down as they're getting out and do some damage as they're getting out, but it barely slows them at all, and they just kind of walk out of it, or sometimes if they're ranged, they just sit in the middle of the circle, and that does none of your damage for you. So it does, just having the stacks of the Jeram's Revenge does increase the damage of several other skills, which I think is good. Like you can run Fire Bats with it, or you could run Zombie Charger. I really like the classes that let you pick the damage skills that you want to use instead of forcing you into one exact archetype. However, the actual Wall of Death is not very useful, unfortunately.
And in this new patch, they buffed Witch Doctor skills, including Acid Cloud, Fire Bats, Grasp of the Dead, Wall of Zombies, and Zombie Charger, and they added a new passive that gives you a damage buff on targets within 25 yards. So they're just like throwing the kitchen sink at Witch Doctors, except that Witch Doctors live in huts without plumbing, therefore they don't have kitchen sinks. So you've been playing a Witch Doctor on and off forever, Xanth. I mean, basically kind of you've been pushing that boulder up the hill, and then you get to the top and it rolls back down. So is your Witch Doctor named Sisyphus, or do you just keep doing it out of like some sort of perverse hoodoo voodoo?
That's actually a good idea. I think my next Witch Doctor will be Sisyphus, but I like the class. I like the concept of the class. This mid-range, you have some pets, you have some spells, and they're all kind of random, and there's there's an appeal to it from that randomness. But I think the danger of random is then there's a lack of cohesion and I guess in some ways comparability to other classes. A barbarian's going to hit things, and it's going to be melee. A monk's going to hit things. A demon hunter is going to be shooting things from afar. What's a witch doctor to do? And I think that's the danger of this mid-range character, and that's why we saw this new passive come in, because it's caught between two worlds. It's very, very squishy if it gets too close, but it doesn't have enough real range to take things out from an extreme distance. And the pets, they've gotten a lot better since the beginning of the game, but they still necessarily can't be too relied on. That's why a build like the Dagger of Darts build is nice, because you had control over those pets, and that's what made them really effective. When you have 23 of them shooting darts at exactly what you want, it's nice, whereas when they're running all around the screen, they're not exactly being super effective. But despite its flaws, it's still probably the class I enjoy the most, because there is, I think as Empty One said, that there is a little bit of variety in what you can do, and being able to come back to zombie bears or acid cloud or something like that is pretty nice.
Yeah, I was actually trying to gear up a Witch Doctor a little bit on the last PTR before they wiped my character, of course. I had a softcore Demon Hunter I hadn't played. It was like level 61. I hadn't played it the first day of ROS. And I get on there, I'm like, I haven't played Witch Doctor in like a year and a half. I'm like, is Zombie Bear still the best skill? It's like, no, not so much. Like, last time I played Witch Doctor was like ROS. Remember you'd run into packs and do Spirit Vessel, whatever that one was. That gives you 5 stacks and lots of stuff nearby. And then you would spam Zombie Bears, and you'd run to the next pack and do Spirit Vessel, and it would turn off all your cooldowns because you had Grave Injustice and everything, right?
Yep.
That's like 1,000 years ago. It doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, the new Hex build with the Monojuma's Revenge set of Ceremonial Knife and Mojo is kind of similar to that. You run in and explode as a chicken, and then if you have Ingeom, which reduces your cooldowns, and you have Grim Feast or whatever it is, the one that reduces your cooldowns by killing things near you, then you basically can instantly cast Hex again and go to the next pack and blow up, and then go to the next pack and blow up. So it's a fairly fast build for, especially in comparison to what else the Witch Doctor's been able to do.
So have you been playing it forever? I mean, you heard Xanth's thing. Obviously, we never talk about Witch Doctors, so I'm letting you guys run here with all your Witch Doctor stuff. I have not played them, so I have no opinion except for, useless jokes, which is pretty much my role in this podcast.
Yeah.
But so have you been playing it forever, MP1? Is that one of your longtime favorite classes? Do you like how it's changing? All the current powerful builds for Witch Doctors are either, total ZDPS support. I was going to say, the only way you see a Witch Doctor in a higher, greater rift is when they're just, perma-fearing everything. But, of course, that's been changed in this patch. Or else the solo ones, it's just about having lots and lots of little midget guys shooting darts at stuff.
Well, one of the challenges for me is I like playing every single class, and I enjoy most of them a lot. If I had to pick 2 that are my top 2...
Somebody's check cleared this week, huh, Xanth?
I wish. If I had to pick 2, it would be Monk, because it's just a badass character. I mean, like, when you think about the way that it works, it's just cool. And I've always wanted to do like a primary only build, and I'm finally getting that for my Monk. Where the majority of the damage comes from primary, I can use support skills. And then the Witch Doctor. But I've played all classes. I had, even back in vanilla, had them all hardcore and softcore up to 60, and now all of them up to 70. And I really enjoy swapping around, because I get bored with characters over time, especially when I'm not getting the loot that I want to get, and we've all been there.
Well, that never happens on Diablo 3. You always get the loot you want.
Yeah, so I'm very happy if I compare what the Witch Doctors are now to what they were, because there was a time, and it wasn't really that long ago, where pets were absolutely useless. They just died. And so they finally improved them, but the problem is, I think Blizzard is so worried about, well, if we make the Witch Doctor too overpowered, we'll just have another, issue with having to tone them down. So they're afraid to do the extensive stuff, making them actually comparable with the top tier classes right now. I think now that CC is gone, I think the pets are an even bigger advantage. CC is not gone, but it's been reduced in effectiveness. The pets are an even bigger advantage for the Witch Doctor. However, how much damage do they deserve to lose because of that? That's the tough balancing point for Blizzard to decide on, and I wouldn't want to be in their shoes for it.
Yeah, I like the part where you said Blizzard's afraid to make characters overpowered in Diablo 3.
Well, we've got
we don't
super
see any of
overpowered
that.
characters. I'm saying they don't want the Witch Doctor to be the one that's super overpowered because he's not, or he or she is not the favorite of any of the current
it's a doctor,
developers.
I think we can be honest about this.
Whoa!
It's not the witch nurse. Come on, guys, let's get with the times.
What are the times in the 1950s?
Yes.
Oh.
It's not the witch sandwich maker. Come on, I mean, let's be serious here. Let's just move along. Anyway.
Yeah, so
why does Blizzard hate witch doctors?
I don't think they do hate the witch doctors. I think they're trying to improve them, but like I said, I think they're worried about making them too powerful. I think
that's evidence they hate witch doctors. Every other class is wildly overpowered.
Every other class? Nerdwords would say the wizard needs more. I don't know.
Well, that's all he knows.
Needs more, but I am very happy the Crusader finally is going to have a ranged build that works. Xanth was mentioning earlier that the Witch Doctor's kind of in this weird area of being a mid-range character, and that's how I've always wanted to play my Crusader, and I still have essentially my original build that I planned out that uses like Heaven's Fury as an actual cooldown skill, and it never performed the way it should, even with amazing gear, because you are very limited in what you can do with the Crusader. So I'm glad that we're finally going to at least have a Hammered in coming in the Crusader.
Have you guys done any Crusader stuff on the PTR? They do have a new set, but I have not tested it. We haven't talked about that at all in the podcast.
I haven't tested it, but it is my planned character for this next season. I'm planning on maining that, so I will be doing some research before that happens.
Maybe we can get you on the podcast next time. How about you, Xanth?
I've actually got a chance to test it. That was once Helltooth and a Rakier set were really bad at the first iteration of the PTR. I decided to jump over to Monk and Crusader to try out their new sets, and the Monk I really liked, but the Crusader was the one I probably enjoyed the most because it was a little bit of a hark back to Diablo 2 and the Hammered In, and being able to kind of just go through and just start slinging hammers and then playing around with what type of Blessed Hammer you actually want to have and have it being replicated and doing a whole bunch of damage. It was a lot of fun. And if the Witch Doctor is not in a great place come live, I think I may actually go with the Crusader at least for Season 4, just because that build in and of itself has been amazing.
If anybody had Hark in their Diablo 3 drinking game, you can take a shot. Xanth is pretty good at hitting those semi-archaic English terms for your drinking games at home, so that's a nice touch. So I don't have any notes on the Crusaders, so we have to move on now because I neither know nor care, and Katniss isn't here tonight, so... Although he's back into playing the game more, so maybe we can hit him on one of these weeks. Any other... We've kind of beaten the Witch Doctor, the hoodoo voodoo thing to death here. Moving on to some other topics. Unless you guys have any final thoughts on Witch Doctor? I mean, do you think the new build is going to be good enough? It's hard to say, just testing it for a week or so, but...
Well, I think there's one set we didn't talk about, which is a Rakier set, the Spider set. And...
Which looks awesome, by the way, but then it just, you have like a giant toad and a giant spider.
Yeah, the visual in of itself, the set looks cool, but it really just does not play well. It seems like a lot of the Witch Doctor community has gravitated towards Helltooth, saying, like, this is the set that we're going to play with. But then the other completely brand new set for this patch, not even a redesign, but made specifically for it, just falls short. It's like 800% increased damage to, some skills and Gargantuan and the zombie dog, so on and so forth. But it underperforms. It's supposed to be this combination of you've got your giant toad and you have increased damage on fire bats and what have you. And it's supposed to work well with the new bracers with reduced damage while casting fire bats. And I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. I tried playing it for a little while the other night, just messing around. I had I forget the name of the helm that creates the mimics, but having that going and casting a lot of different spiders, so on and so forth, it seems like it should be a lot more fun. It seems like it should be a lot more effective, but it's just this collection of different skills that just don't seem to work together.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen with that is people might be able to use that set to get the bonus damage to one skill and to run lower difficulty stuff, but have thing. There, you don't have to do anything. You just get the increased damage on that skill. There's no cycling of skills. You just get a bonus. So I did some with the Locust Swarm with the 800% increase, and was able to just run through T6 and everything was dying side to side. But then I tried it on T8, and of course that the damage from it wasn't.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, I thought I would play with the Renho Flare and Explosive Toads with the increased damage on the set and see how that worked out. It wasn't awful, but I was really kind of hoping with this set that's focused on, it's the creature set, focus on the creatures that you cast, it would line up and just work really, really well, but it just kind of fell flat. It's also just a little weird that this is the spider set, and the two-piece gives you this gigantic spider that you direct with your, the spiders that you throw, but then no other bonus after it has anything to do with spiders. There's no other items that really kind of work with other spider skills. For being a spider set, you would think that would be kind of a theme that would carry throughout, but it just falls flat.
Yeah, so they got arachnophobic halfway through, basically.
I think they were trying to accomplish too much with it because they were trying to make so many skills viable instead of just focusing on 4 or 5 of them and working in conjunction. Like the pets that you do get the bonus damage on, the zombie dogs, their damage output's terrible because it's a holdover from launch. Well, I guess they buffed it one time, but 30% weapon damage, and the Gargantuan doing 100%, it just doesn't work for the pets there.
Right, and if you look at the Witch Doctor too, how many passive skills do you have that marginally increase damage or reduce damage, as well as gain 1 additional zombie dog? They push heavily to have an additional zombie dog, but there really is little gain for you to have it because it doesn't do much.
Right. Their damage output is just too lacking, so I hope they realize that if they want people to use them as actual damage, they're going to have to increase it. But I guess they're thinking of them as, rather than being damage, being utility, because you can have damage reduction through them. And of course they do, unlike your followers, if you play solo, they actually do pull aggro fairly well. So that's one of the difficulties. It goes back to what I was mentioning earlier, that Blizzard's got to decide how they're going to give Witch Doctors enough power, even though they have some extra tools that none of the other classes really have access to.
Shouldn't one of these sets work with either the short man's or the tall man's finger rings, where you're making, a giant sacrifice dog, or else lots of little gargantuans? Shouldn't that be an awesome combination in some way, or maybe even both of those rings?
I think that's Zunamasa's already. I think that's supposed to be the pet set. That is, permanent.
I've seen a build clear Greater Rift 59 or 60 with Helltooth and the Gargantuans, cubing Star Metal, and then a couple other things. But basically, with the cooldown reduction, you can basically spam the, I think it's Wrathful Protector for Gargantuan, where you only get him for 15 seconds, but he does a boatload of more damage. So you basically spam them in combination with the Wall of Death buff that you have, and they do a lot more damage. But it's a lot of kind of the big critique of the Helltooth set. It's a lot of readying, casting your Wall of Death repeatedly, make sure you don't lose the buff so that you can cast another skill. But it does end up being pretty effective when you do use the short man's finger and you have 3 of them just hitting things for 1 billion damage left and right.
Okay, last thing on the Witch Doctor, because I'm sure half of our listeners have already tuned out here. How is the issue with rings? I mean, Focus Restraint has become a thing for almost every other class, and they're just so powerful. Everyone else is using, Rorg or whatever as their cube ring. Rorg or Unity if you're hardcore maybe, but it's like Focus Restraint has just sort of taken over the game where every build either uses it or wishes they were. Is that the thing with Witch Doctors as well?
I haven't experienced that on live, but on the PTR, I definitely tried to use a 2-piece Zunies with the Helltooth and with the Arakir set, and it didn't function at all because the fetishes just didn't have enough damage. So I think that it might be viable now to run Focus and Restraint and not have to like think about putting 2 sets on together or anything like that.
So the only difference about Witch Doctors was the one class that wasn't using Focus Restraint, now that's going to be gone. Okay, great.
Well, when you make something that
thus is character variety created.
Well, speaking of character variety, as they increase damage from the mobs attacking you and increase the difficulty, they limit the amount of builds that work. So I was really happy with the way it was up to this patch. T6 was at a point where you could run a variety of builds. T10, I guess we will eventually power creep into the point where there are a variety of builds, but not as many build options as we have now, probably. So they talk about this diversity, 10,000 builds or whatever, but you really only have maybe 3 or 4 per class that are functional.
If that many, yeah. Okay, any last Witch Doctor thoughts? And we're moving on to to classes that people actually play, other than you masochistic types who want to suffer for trying to make a class that works but never will. Have either of you been an angry chicken this week?
I did run that build for a while. It was a lot of fun.
Have either of you eaten fried chicken with beer this week?
Surprisingly, no.
Nope.
Xanth, why do you hate America?
I'm just not a huge fried chicken fan in general.
I'll have to ask you again, Xanth. Why do you hate America? Okay, moving on. Next question. Reflex damage was one of the things we talked about last podcast, and it's changed on the PTR to become instant death for almost every class except for Witch Doctors because they don't actually do any damage to enemies, so they're safe.
Yeah, their pets take care of it.
Actually, they're getting murdered too. But have either of you guys gotten the new reflex damage in this patch? According to the patch notes, it now has a warning visual for a short time before dealing damage. It is of the same type of damage that was dealt, which I'm not sure how it helps you anyway, and has a short internal countdown. Have you noticed changes to it? Is it still instant death for everything?
The benefit of it being the same type is you could stack poison resist or physical resist, like the Witch Doctor actually has a physical resist skill that could have a big effect on it if you're running that. I have actually run into it, and I was playing on my hardcore character and almost killed myself in a T8, but then I realized, hey, just let my pets take care of it. So I just laid back and let them do that, which is one of the benefits of the Witch Doctor, although it took a while.
Any, what's that thing skill? What am I talking about here, Xanth? Reflex damage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that now?
I have not encountered it. Even before, like, on live, in encountering reflect damage, you normally see it beforehand, and I guess falling back on playing Witch Doctor, it never really was a big deal. I guess it's just being aware and knowing what you're going up against. It is that kind of concept of what the game has become now, where you're trying to kill everything so quickly that if you don't pay attention to it and suddenly end up dead, you're surprised by it. I guess I don't necessarily mind the reflect damage because it does require you then to pay a little more attention as you're going through. Think of all the monster types that have been removed from the game because of it kind of going against that concept. We got rid of the invulnerability on certain monsters. We got rid of the original Arcane. Do you remember that, Flux, where it was the Hydras that would shoot the...
Yes, those were awesome. They should bring those back tomorrow.
But we've
I actually liked those. They were fun. You had to run for your life, though.
Yeah, especially at the lower levels too, as you were, dodging them left and right. But we've removed all these little hiccups that prevent us from killing as quickly as possible. I guess I just don't have a problem if we have to slow down a little bit and say, hey, I can't just spam one skill at this because it's going to kill me. How can I take this?
Is the best benefit, Xanth, that you no longer have to shower now that you're a filthy casual? It just saves time in the night, and you get to go right to bed and just lay in a bed of your own filth. Because only filthy casuals don't think that our reflex damage is instant death for everything, or possibly Witch Doctor players, or possibly both.
Well, I figured with as many Turbo HUD users as there are out there, they'd probably know in advance and just skip those packs.
Possibly. Or they'll all be banned very soon, so that'll be the problem solved.
Right, and if they're bots anyway, doesn't matter if they die.
No, it's all softcore that they're worried about.
Yeah.
So another change to in this patch, a minor thing, Kanai's Cube, one of the exploitable recipes last time was the reroll set item, what is it, they call convert set item, I think they called it, where you could make any set item in a set, and for just, what was it, 10 death breaths and 10 souls, or something else?
Yeah, 10 breath and 10 souls.
And that was Blizzard's idea, was that this would be how you'd get, if you kept rolling, you kept finding Natalia's pants, and you had to get Natalia's belt or whatever. Okay, there's no belt. If only I played Demon Hunters, I would know these things. If you needed one last item for your set and you couldn't get it, you kept finding boots or pants or whatever, you could roll that. Which is a nice idea. Okay, that's how it still works. But the problem was that people could do 2 item sets, and just reroll the same item. And Focus Restraint was one thing, but then there was Bolcatho's set and Shinlong's set and Danetta's sets, all of which had 2 weapons, and it was very easy just to roll until you had 2 perfect ancient items. And Blizzard's like, yeah, we're going to fix that, this is going to be changed. And we had all these grand schemes and concepts, like they would make the cost increase, so you can only do it 3 times per item, or it would be like enchanting, where the cost would go up each time you rolled it, and they just said, no, we're just going to make it so you can't do this without sets that at least have 3 items in them. So, simultaneously, the laziest and possibly most effective fix ever. How do you guys feel about this change? If you're playing Witch Doctors, I suppose you probably don't even care. But, we all saw monks leap up 25 greater rifts just instantly, thanks to Shinlong's set being spectacular, and this recipe making it very easy to have awesome ancient Shinlong sets. Do either of you guys approve of this fix? Do you think it's lazy? Should they have been a little more clever in how they fixed it?
I'm okay with
it. Or you
fix.
Witch Doctors, you don't care?
I'm okay with it. I don't think it was a mistake on their part to do it. Yeah, we'd love something more elegant that still allowed us to have a chance to get an item we're missing in 2-piece sets. But if it's going to delay the patch by 2 weeks or whatever, which with their coding time, sometimes it might, I'm okay with them making this change now, especially since they can change it later if they really need to.
Okay, I'm unsatisfied by that, but I can't argue with it. What do you think, Sam?
I think I'm okay with it. 2-piece sets mainly are weapon and offhand and rings. I think that there's a couple random ones, aren't there? But
yeah, an amulet.
Yeah, it mainly falls on those, whereas the original intention of it was for those 5 or 6 piece sets that you've been trying to finish and you just can't because you keep finding the same thing. And what we did, like what we always do, is we found an exploit, and that's what we did. We exploited it, and that's the point of the PTR. I can't imagine a different way of fixing it, and maybe in higher costs or whatever, but somebody would find a way to cheese that system too. So why not just take it off the table and not make it a temptation?
They should make a new item called Temptation, actually. That would be a good name for a set.
But
I'm totally for that.
For the only female demon hunter class? Because that's the only gender you can have there?
Yes. It's the only appropriate class for demon hunters is females. And same with wizards also. This has been long established. Was that supposed to be a joke? That's just a factual statement. Okay, another change. I think the Kanai's Cube change for the set thing was kind of lazy and uninspired, but I can't say that it's not effective, so I guess we'll deal with that, right?
Yeah.
It's funny how they said over 2, like there are any 3-item sets, Just say 4-item sets, even that really don't even exist anymore. Pretty much everything is 6 or 7.
Yeah, there are 3-piece crafted sets, and I don't think that's going to be an issue with crafted sets as much.
Yeah, it exists, but no one cares. It's not like you're going to re-roll that. Ooh, I got to get my Dread Pirate Roberts peg leg, whatever the hell that set's called. I think that's got 3 in it. No one cares. Okay. Amusing change they made with Torment levels. So they said you can only do Torment 7 or higher if you're level 70, and you cannot enter a public game on Torment 7 through 10 unless you are of a certain Paragon level. You have to be Paragon 100 to Torment 7, 150 for 8, 200 for 9, or 250 for 10. When is the last time either of you guys entered a public game hoping to leech off much higher Torment levels and say no?
We play hardcore, so we don't do that.
Totally irrelevant, right?
Right. I guess I don't get the Paragon restriction, especially with the rate of experience gain now. I would think during Season 4, be Paragon 100 before I'd be ready for Torment 8. Obviously...
Well, that's because you play hardcore and actually care if you die, so...
Yeah. It just seems very random because Paragon level is not necessarily an indicator of your character's capability for that particular level. It's just an indicator of how much experience you've gained. It has nothing to do with gear or survivability or anything like that. It just seems like this kind of random roadblock where they're like, well, we got these levels, so let's use them for something. I don't know. I don't like it.
I think they might have been just trying to appease some of the people that have made this request to somehow limit some of the leeching that's going on in the softcore world, and I guess it goes on somewhat in the hardcore world as well. But they didn't have a great solution, so they decided that they could use Paragon levels as a limitation, and it's pretty arbitrary one because you could have a brand new character or a brand new 70 and have another character that earned your Paragon experience on it, and now that brand new 70 can go into your T10 game and leech.
You're acting as if people play more than one class in Diablo 3, and obviously that is not the case, so I can throw that argument out comfortably. Only you do. Only you and achievement whores do that, so we know we can roll that right out.
Achievement whore, so.
Given how fast, it's kind of hard to tell, since they're playing now, that they're back to the massive community buff since Friday came back on again. I played a little bit yesterday and just did a new. I was trying to do a softcore, and I had a level 20 softcore from a few days ago in season 4, and I joined in 5 hours and 7 minutes queue. I'm like, okay, not so much. Xanth, they're playing hardcore at the moment. He said, yeah, my queue was like 2 minutes, so I made a hardcore level 1 and got in like 4 minutes. So I don't know. We were discussing the whole thing of how it's awesome now because queues are gone, like last podcast. Slightly before, perhaps a little before its time, unlike a wine from that Orson Welles commercial from the old days. But yeah, the queues are back, and they are like 11 hours long. So play hardcore, and there's like a 2-minute queue because Blizzard hates softcore players. Almost as much as they hate witch doctors.
Or there's just more softcore players trying to get a whole bunch of sparkly loots while they can.
Well, the question is, why do they have the potential server support apportioned? Like, why is it 90% for softcore, 10% for hardcore, and then if there's 95% softcore, they have huge queues? Why is there 5 hours of different wait queue time depending on if you're playing hardcore or softcore? Why isn't there just X amount of server space? It's allotted to first come, first serve.
Are we arguing?
Because Blizzard hates softcore. I think we just covered that. Yeah.
Right.
I was just going to say, are we arguing that hardcore shouldn't get preferential treatment? Because I don't think that's the case.
Well, it's the PT. I mean, in real game, yes, of course, because softcore people are dirty casuals. But I'm talking about on the PTR. Some of us want to just test just whatever, just throw some character on there and do crazy stuff and not care if you die.
Yeah, I don't think it's...
Are you saying you have softcore characters to play with on the PTR? Because when I copy over, I don't have any.
Some of us make new characters and experience the season as it's meant to be experienced, Sam. We don't drag our old Paragon 14 characters in and think we're the shit in a new bucket.
I don't think it's intentional that they have it portioned this way. I think it's just the way that servers work. I played a lot of first-person shooters. I know that they use different servers. They assign different servers for the different playlists. You'd have different effects based on where you went. And, of course, it has to do with traffic. So, yeah, they could allocate more servers to the softcore, but I don't want them to do that.
In other words, Blizzard hates softcore. Okay, next topic. Adjustment to Rift's progress. They gave Guardian Health a little buff and adjusted Rift progress. I have not done any high-level stuff since this week, since the new patch came out, because I had real-life things, and real-life sucks, as always. You guys who are on summer vacation for 8 months and still leeching off the public tit with your not-real jobs and squandering our America's future and youth, or something like that, right? That's what the teacher's motto is. You guys have been playing a little more. Have you done any high-level stuff? You copied over your characters. Do you notice a difference in the Rift speeds between the first 2 weeks of the PTR, if you were playing then, and how does it compare to live? My experience in the first couple of weeks is that Rifts felt a little sluggish in terms of progress bar. Like, I would get a really dense Rift, be blasting along and feeling like I was really going good progress, and look up, I'd be like 77%. It just seemed like it was a little too long, and then you get the Guardian, and you would two-shot the Guardian. It just seemed like a weird sort of blend. So how does it feel to you guys now? What do you think, Sam?
I think, having played through the whole PTR, it did feel a little bit slower at the beginning. It still feels a little slow now. you just have those moments where it's like, I feel like I would have been done on live. But the other thing that I kind of chalk it up to is I've been playing a lot with different sets and different builds, so I can't tell necessarily if it's just the way the build is performing or the Rift itself. But overall, by comparison to live, they feel a little bit slower, but I guess not too game-changing.
I think one of the differences is now with the progress orbs they have in the regular Rifts, you actually have to stop your flow and move back and grab progress orbs sometimes because they actually move some of the points that you would have gotten towards your progress into those orbs from the elites. So it's like, yeah, they're great. It feels good to have a big chunk move when you pick some of them up, but unfortunately it didn't actually speed up the Rifts at all. So I think that it is slightly slower because you have to slow yourself down in order to grab those things. I didn't do a lot of Greater Rift testing, so I don't know if the pacing on there is significantly different or not.
Greater Rift felt okay. I just felt that normal Rift felt a little slow, and it wasn't like my killing speed was lacking. I mean, I was doing GR50 pretty easily, and then I would do Greater Rift. I would do regular, Tournament 9 or 10, and it just felt like I guess you kind of had this clock in your head from doing so many T6 Rifts back on live, and you're like, okay, I've killed X amount of monsters, I should be ready for the Guardian. And you look up and it's like 81%, and you were like, eh. But then the Guardians were so low on hit points, it was just kind of ridiculous. Of course, I was playing a 12 billion crit with my belt and ROV on my Demon Hunter, right? So it is a little deceptive for single target attacks because they die instantaneously.
Yeah.
A problem with Witch Doctors also, right? Because Guardians die in like one shot, right?
On T6 they do, but not on T10.
So yeah, I haven't played any in the current patch, and maybe I should just copy over a character and just try that out instead of doing new stuff, but who knows? I haven't had a chance for that yet. Busy. So, Witch Doctor changes, we covered a lot of that stuff thoroughly, and you both hate America, you're not eating fried chicken, we covered that.
Paragon 2000.
Oh yeah, the Paragon 2000 thing. So a guy has reached Paragon 2000, I mean not actually, he has enough Paragon, it's like 1780 plus like 1300, and the 1780 is in Season 4, so he's actually got more in Season 4 Season 3 on live than he has total. But if the season ended today, he would have over Paragon 2000, and one of the Diablo 3 ladder sites posted an interview with the guy. And he basically, just said the game is ridiculous now. When you have 900 Paragon points above Paragon 800, and every single one of those goes into your main stat, that's like 4,600 more main stat, which is basically 50% damage buff, roughly speaking. And it seems like when Blizzard envisioned this system of Paragons, they were thinking people get to like maybe 850, 900, it won't be a big difference, right? And now they're at like 1,700, and that's like... I remember thinking when they first announced this, 5 more main stat per Paragon point, that's like, why even bother? Who cares, right? But when you've got 1,000 of them, that does tend to add up a little bit. And this is something that Nerdwords has talked about on the podcast a lot, trying to get up to higher Greater Rifts with a Demon Hunter, with a Wizard. And he's at like, if you're at Paragon 700 and someone else is at like Paragon 1100, they have such a huge buff in damage over you because they have so much more main stat, that once you get above 800, it really starts to add up, where every single point, instead of every fourth point, goes to your main stat. And it seems like that's what this guy basically said in his interview with the Paragon 2000 guy. Just said it's too easy. It's not. There's too much advantage. They should make higher Paragon levels either slower to get, or they should just give you, new transmog options or something. It shouldn't all be power because the highest Greater Rift now is such a pressure to endlessly grind. Otherwise, you just can't do it. Exactly the same gear on a Paragon 800 versus a Paragon 1400. The 1400 is going to just destroy him in overall Greater Rift skills. So Xanth, as a hardcore player, you probably got like Paragon like 1300 this season, probably.
Oh yeah.
Is that a problem? Are you seeing? Is it too easy now when you're doing Greater Rift 70? You just feel overpowered? How is that working for you?
I almost quit because it was just so easy for me. No, I don't have that problem at all. I think I'm like Paragon 500 total.
So is this just like ultimate first world problems here, or what?
Yeah. How many hours do you have to play to hit that? I don't.
I like how you said play. Right. How many hours does your game have to be active and something moving around the screen while you're out, sleeping?
Right. I think it is. It will be an issue. Maybe not for the average player in this season, but like 2-3 seasons down the road as things keep rolling, maybe, where you do kind of hit that point. and it probably should be addressed. I think it's an interesting issue. It's something I certainly never thought about because I never envisioned having that much Paragon, and to be honest, I still don't. But, first world problems.
And, of course, the same quality of gear that enables you to do T6 solo, in fact, if you're softcore, you're doing GR44 in 3 minutes in 4-player parties. And that was one of the other things he mentioned in his interview, that, you're just so incredibly disadvantaged playing solo or not playing in parties all the time. And the other big issue is the plus % experience gear, where people have Hellfire rings and Leoric's ring and a ruby in their helm. And that can make such a huge difference in terms of your EXP gain, compared to someone else who doesn't have that gear on, who is doing all the damage. And that gets into the whole issue we've had going on for months about being a ZDPS support character means you're actually getting double the experience. And that is a change in the patch where it now averages across the whole group. So if, the ZDPS classes, their plus EXP gear makes everybody gain more experience. It's divided evenly, which is nice. But it's still, there's this huge advantage for playing in a large multiplayer group. Easier, faster killing, and you get vastly more experience.
Yeah.
So other person, empty one.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the whole Paragon thing, and how do you feel about the whole multiplayer buff thing?
I was really interested in that article or that interview with Vejet, the guy who hit 2,000. I remember when Alkaiser, he got 100, and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, how much time did he put in to get to 100?" Well, now we've got drastically more XP that we can gain. But Alkaiser did that 100% solo, and Vejet specifically said, there's no way you could do this solo nowadays because everything's compounding on top of the other things from playing multiplayer. So first of all, you've got only a minor increase in health of the monsters is the only downside to playing multiplayer. Not doubling the health. If you got 2 players, instead of having 200% health, you got 150% health, so you're each only having to do 75% damage. So just that's an advantage, and of course it is compounded each time there's another player added. But then you've also got your increases that come from things like legendary gems that affect making everyone else do additional damage, slowing all the enemies so everyone can take advantage of that. Whatever it might be in the case, it all adds up into making you much, much more efficient. Well, that's what multiplayer should do. You should be more efficient in multiplayer. However, the major issue, I think, is the fact that there's also this strength in numbers bonus that is, a stayover from a time when it was more difficult to clear in larger groups or in playing multiplayer. And so Vejet basically said, you're getting twice the effect per the time you put in because of all these factors adding up or multiplying up, really, to giving you this huge advantage over a solo player. I think that issue in and of itself should make Blizzard really consider the balancing they're doing there. And they've responded to the requests to make solo play a little bit better, but their response also buffed multiplayer play, like changing it instead of being key wardens to basically machine wardens, so you get the machines instantly. Well, that just means multiplayer is even faster to farm for Hellfire gear as well. So I just like Xanth, at least. I don't know about you, Flux. You might be Paragon 2000 right now, or pretty close.
2400.
Wow. I don't think I'm ever going to be at that point.
I'm rounding up a little, but yeah.
And I also am not one of those people who has the time to commit to compete at that highest level. So I don't feel like I'm being cheated by other people having so much more main stat than me. As long as I can clear and have fun with the build I'm playing, I'm fine. I would like more gear, though.
I think the other thing, at least for me too, is playing seasons, it's always a fresh slate. So I don't feel at a disadvantage if my old character's Paragon level doesn't add up to the thousands because everybody's going to start again at Paragon 0.
Yeah, I think that's a great feeling. And most of us come back for seasons mainly because of that. Yeah, the nice new fancy stuff pulls us back too, but we don't feel like we're at a huge disadvantage because we don't put in 6 hours a day or have something else running all the time for us.
I feel like, Blizzard, if you look back to their quotes from forever ago, they've always said, they want Diablo 3 to be a multiplayer experience, and that was their big excuse with the whole online-only DRM thing. Like, oh, the game is much better as a multiplayer experience, and we all kind of laughed and scoffed and said, come on, this is obviously about piracy. But they have consistently forever said the game should be more fun multiplayer, and we can all remember back in, I remember talking to Xanth about this forever ago, and there was a time multiplayer sucked.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like early on in Reaper, back in Diablo 3 Classic,
Right.
like you got monsters all win 100% increase for every person in the game, so if anybody was weaker than you actually, it got harder.
And increased damage output from them, too, which we don't have.
Yeah, and you didn't get much of a bonus. There was that strength in numbers, it was weakness in numbers, basically. And I mean, it was terrible, and now it just seems like they've gone a little too far for that. And I think the game is more of a pure challenge playing solo. I mean, a lot of stuff you can't rely on someone else just tanking and destroying. I understand that the game in softcore especially is just such a mad rush forward and for experience. You know, people just leaving like every solo monster behind. You're always pushing and rushing and going faster. It's all about just gobbling up the dots as fast as your little Pac-Man can do it. And that just seems like, I mean, okay, that's a valid way to play, and people really enjoy that, but it just seems to me it's much more of a pure experience when you've actually got to kill stuff yourself and be a little bit strategic. The last podcast, I talked a lot about playing the first Season 4, which was, 3 weeks ago when they did that for the first time. I played the whole thing from level 1 in softcore, and playing in multiplayer with people, how like, just, it's terrifying. It's my analogy always is it's like when you're driving with someone who's a lunatic and you start like stomping a hole in their floor mat because you want a brake pedal on your side of the car. That's kind of what it's like watching someone play softcore, like on these live streams that Blizzard puts up, they're Play Your Way Thursday kind of things. And they're just like standing there while the frozen is getting bigger or the molten's about to blow up, and they're like, oh, they're just kind of ignoring stuff, or like opening their inventory in the middle of a battle, like with like arcanes going everywhere.
Yeah.
And you're just like, ooh, God, don't, no, and they explode, and there's a 1 second delay when they get to start again. And playing hardcore, that just drives you kind of insane. But why else? Why would you not? If there's a game with no death penalties, then nobody cares about dying, right? So, I just noticed how different people play in softcore, and they should play differently. You should be pushing into a much higher tournament than you can actually handle. But it kind of sucks that the game totally rewards that in every way at this point. So
I think their reward for survival of the experience pools is kind of laughable. I really think that a survival bonus that increases your XP and increases your magic find and gold find all just automatically by the more experience you gain while you have it would be amazing. But then, of course, the softcore community would complain. It's like an ultimate buff for hardcore players because when we get that 100% bonus or whatever, they'd be very unhappy. But I think that
kind of makes
really,
up the fact that we can't die constantly.
Right. I think that would really motivate people to play the game and actually think about it while they're playing instead of, watching TV while they do it. And some people want to do that, which is fine. But there are others that want it to be somewhat challenging and want to be focused on it, that are okay with things like reflect damage, doing massive damage to the player.
And it's not even, obviously hardcore can play in groups, it's not like it's just for hardcore people. I mean, there are people who enjoy playing solo and softcore and want it to be more of a challenge and feel like it's a pure experience when you're not just relying on someone else to do all the damage. And as someone who's watching TV right now, Xanth, what do you think about not watching TV while playing the game?
I am not watching TV, actually. I'm listening very diligently, but I think the buff is an interesting thing because the group playing buff, it did come about as a necessity originally, and it is being exploited in some respects now. I remember when I made my trek to Paragon 100 long ago, I played mainly in public groups because of that buff, because it was a way to speed it across a little bit. But the experience gain back then is nowhere near what it's like now, which leads to it being a much bigger advantage. And I think it is kind of funny that we push a lot into group play because it is more effective, and I think you're right, Empty One, with the decrease in overall damage, or at least in terms of the output that you need to do, it's much easier. But the pinnacle of how characters are judged is how well they do on the solo leaderboards for greater rifts. Nobody cares about your 4-player or 3-player or 2-player leaderboards. It's always on what can they do by themselves, because it is really at its purest form, because you have nothing else to rely on. You have no additional bonuses. It is just what you can do. It would be nice to kind of see that parity kind of within all forms, whether it's duo or 3 or 4.
Except, of course, that you can play in 4-player games and get to Paragon 800 in 20 minutes. Okay, not literally, but the vast experience you build up in 4-player games then enables you to be much stronger in solo games.
Right.
So it's just like almost, they're not never going to do this, but imagine if your Paragon points actually kept track if it was multiplayer or solo player. So you'd have, you'd Paragon 17 in solo and Paragon 650 in 4-player or something, which will never happen, of course, but that would seem like it would be a way to kind of fix this, but we're never going to see it, so what's the point?
I think that they are going to make some changes because they don't want to make the people who want to play solo move on to other games that are more rewarding for solo players, some of the other action RPGs that are around. But I don't know if they're willing to do something that's a drastic change, or if they're just going to do something kind of to appease people. But we'll see, I guess.
Do you want a drastic change, Xanth, or do you want to be appeased?
Or
are you happy abusing the multiplayer bonuses?
To be honest, since Reaper of Souls had launched, even with all the additional multiplayer options with clans and communities, I found myself playing solo a lot more. Even though it is not nearly as effective, it's just been better for my playing restraints. If kid starts crying, it's easier to pause the game and walk away than to be in the middle of something. But I don't know. I'll make it work regardless of what they do.
That's a adaptable claim there.
Well, we really don't have a choice, right?
We always have a choice, Sam. There's always a choice. Okay, last topic. Esport, quote, quote, athletes, quote, quote. There was the article I did a news post about it, getting drug testing for esports athletes, and of course, you really can't, as I said in comments, it's almost like a caption this in written form. We do these caption this, and you post a funny picture of, some guy falling over his dog playing Diablo 3, and everyone posts silly comments about it. But in this case, it's like, you'll take my Mountain Dews and Cheeto when you pry them from my cold dead hands, that kind of thing. Like, you just almost can't help making pithy, ridiculous comments about it. Or am I greatly blaspheming the proud and emerging sport of playing video games for money while sitting on your ass in a big auditorium somewhere? Sam?
I think the term athlete is getting used a little loosely nowadays.
Professional chess players athletes.
No.
So why are video players athletes?
They're not. It's a skill set, absolutely. There's some people, and I know I'm saying kids because I feel like that's the demographic, but there are some people who are very, very skilled at a video game, and that's great. And if you can make money off of it, awesome. I don't think that makes you an athlete. And by association, I don't think you need to be drug tested. If you can play a video game on whatever it happens to be and you're winning, great, because it's a video game. It didn't give you physical superiority over the person next to you. It didn't give you that much of an advantage. Who cares?
I think the reason they're doing it is not so much because it really does give a legitimate advantage. Of course, there can be a little bit from stimulants that you might use. I think most players probably consume a fair amount of caffeine when they're staying up late to play through the first day of seasons. But
the news, the guy said he was using Adderall, which is used to treat ADHD, but it helps you be super. That's like super caffeine in function. Right?
Yeah, but it's a concentration aid as well. It helps you focus, and that's key. If you want to play a game at the highest level, you have to be 100% focused on it. Your brain's drifting off on something else. You're not going to have the reaction times that you need. But don't take my statement there to mean that I think they're athletes. I think that I think that they're competitive, and I think they have skills that when I was younger I wish I had. But they're not athletes just because of that. Otherwise, all competition is athletics, and that's not true. It's definitely competitive. And I think that this was kind of something that was brought on purpose because they're really trying to legitimize esports and get the coverage and put it on ESPN and everything. And we have the viewership there. I guess there are thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people that watch people play video games all the time. So if they're going to monetize it and everything, they want it to be credible. They want it to seem like it's a fair competition. They want people to buy into it being not rigged. The WWE or whatever wrestling organization can have tons of viewership, but it's certainly not a sport in that way because it doesn't have a true competition element. It's just entertainment. So there can be kind of a differentiation between things that are just competition and things that are actually sports, and then things that are athletics and things that are actually sports.
Yeah, I think, first on the athletes thing, I think it's an insult to actual athletes to call people athletes who cannot climb 2 flights of stairs without stopping to cough in between.
Hey, Flux, none of those professional gamers are in that kind of shape, unfortunately.
If they're climbing up with their right forefinger, yes, they can do that. I'm sure they have incredibly strong fingers, but
I think you have
buff for using the mouse.
I think you have to be in a fairly good shape to compete at the games that actually require quick reflexes, not the same kind of shape you need to be in for professional sports. But no, that doesn't make it a sport just because you can't be completely out of shape and do it.
The thing about, I don't even really care about this issue, it's kind of ridiculous, but the whole thing with the drug stuff, you guys are basically saying it doesn't make that much difference. What if there was a drug that gave you, 10 times, a steroid version, an HGH of, video gaming skills? That made you have, like the spice, like you're in Dune, you can see through time now.
Ooh.
You've got 10 times faster reflexes. You never make a mistake. You don't need to blink for an hour and a half at a time. I mean, that would obviously be completely corrupting to any kind of video game competition.
Yeah, but everyone would be using it.
So it seems like we're just talking about degrees, right? Where you're just saying, well, ADHD doesn't make that much difference over just having like 7 Red Bulls.
Right.
So it doesn't matter. But obviously, at some point, there probably will be drugs that really do make a big difference. And we're joking about them being athletes, but it is a competition, obviously.
Definitely.
And if there are drugs that improve your ability at a competition, whether it's lifting heavy things or running fast or clicking a mouse really, really quick with 2 fingers and saying "for the horde" in a loud voice, you need to regulate these things if you're going to have a fair competition. You can't have someone having hacks on his computer letting see through walls in Counter-Strike. And if you have enough Red Bull, you can actually see through time. So that is probably the same kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's their goal, is to legitimize it by making it seem like it's completely fair. And they have to do this in order to make it seem that way. And I think they want the attention. These aren't the athletes that are crying out for it. They probably don't feel like they're getting cheated by other people using stimulants. What it is the people that are making major money, that the people who are running the esport competitions are making all that ad revenue. The people who are running the teams that then often take the majority of the money away from the actual players that earned it. These are the people that are trying to bring more attention to the sport and act like, or sport, to the competition, and act like it is a sport.
Because they're athletes.
Sorry. It finally comes out. These guys are athletes, okay? That's why they're on ESPN.
So, have you guys ever been to BlizzCon? You have not, Xanth. You keep saying you're going to go one day, but you never do.
Yeah.
You ever been there, MT1?
I have not made it to a BlizzCon yet. It's the wrong time of the year. If it was in the middle of the summer, I think Xanth and I would both be there.
Well, it was in August a couple of years ago. You didn't go then either, so I think you're just full of excuses.
It was at like the end of August, wasn't it?
Right. We already start work then. I'm sorry, Flux.
Yeah, you're just full of excuses. I have more excuses here. So I've been to BlizzCons many times because it's kind of my lot in life, and I can tell you on the whole athletes or not thing, if the elevators and escalators ever break there, no one is ever going to be on the second floor of BlizzCon. They put the press level on the second floor, and I walk up the stairs sometimes, and it's like hard walking up the stairs. People can come downstairs, much like slinkies can go downstairs, alone or in pairs, and they make a certain slinkety sound. But nobody goes up the stairs at BlizzCon because of gravity. So when we make jokes about people being fat at BlizzCon all the time, that's because they're true.
Yeah.
And they're not fat. Lots of people are just really skinny and emaciated, but they obviously can't climb a flight of stairs. So I don't have any problem with my...
these general players aren't the ones that are competing at that level, though.
Well, they would be if they could click fast enough.
Maybe at like Hearthstone or something, if you want to say that's something where you actually get to take your time. But people, you have to have a certain physical ability in order to accomplish these things, and being drastically overweight.
For 12 hours at a time, that's your ability.
Oh, man.
Stance like, you're just digging your own grave, dude.
Well,
so,
it's funny. It's funny to me.
Exactly. We're just kidding, of course. We love all of our listeners. And some of us aren't in great shape either, but, we're not pretending we're athletes either, right? So we've kind of gone. That's the topics I have. You guys have any final thoughts you're dying to get into?
What about Gamescom?
That's not going to happen.
Well, but here's my thought on Gamescom.
Okay, there's a press conference scheduled for Gamescom. We're going to see Diablo 3 expansion part 2. Blah blah blah. Go ahead. What's your face?
I would love to see it happen, and I really am hoping it will happen more so for the trailer that they put out than the content, because that Reaper of Souls trailer got me more hyped than anything else ever in Diablo. I guess it wasn't really the trailer; it was the opening cinematic. But here's why I think they actually are going to do it, because they've got the most hyped player base that they've had since Reaper of Souls launched, with the major changes they're doing with Kanai's Cube. So I think they're timing that on purpose, but then people might say, well, WoW is supposed to have an expansion. I thought they were doing like 2-year development cycles on those, so it really should be Diablo's time. And then the final thing is that Blizzard flyer for Gamescom that has, I think it's supposed to be Diablo in the back, but it's actually a Heroes of the Storm Diablo, and then there's no other stuff from our actual game on there. I'm thinking that maybe that goes side by side with the new poster that they're going to put up for the expansion, or maybe they even edit that one. You know, they have a different version that includes the new character class we're getting, because obviously they can't have that on there ahead of time, otherwise people would figure it out.
Is there an obvious empty space in that image?
There is certainly not. So that's why I'm thinking. That's why I'm thinking it's more likely that goes side by side with whatever the new Diablo expansion is. But we'll see.
What do you think, Xanth? Do you have Excite?
I think I mentioned it the last podcast that I do suspect Gamescom is where they would announce something. It does seem, and I think Empty One is right, that there's this good momentum going forward. Season 4 should be on the horizon, depending on when they decide to end this season. And people are going to be excited, but naturally, once you have what you've been waiting for, you need something else to wait for. And an expansion would be a good thing to say, like, hey, the changes are great, looking forward to the cube, all that kind of stuff. And now I'm looking forward to the Necromancer or, Amazon, Druid, whatever it happens to be. That would be awesome. And they've got a good history for Gamescom in terms of announcements. So it would just seem weird to do it at BlizzCon, since they're typically the redheaded stepchild that gets neglected anyway at BlizzCon. So why not have its moment to shine at Gamescom?
Yeah, BlizzCon is usually the new WoW thing.
Right.
BlizzCon is mostly an American crowd, and WoW has always been most popular in America. When everyone lines up on the end of that street before the show, they all are usually trying to bum cigarettes. But the ones who aren't are always shouting, "For the Horde!" And there's like one person that says, "Alliance!" And then a bunch of people go, "Whoa!" Because they're like internet tough guys, and they play the big green skin guy with big teeth. So.
Well, they realize they're the majority, so they can push them around.
Yeah, I've never heard anyone saying, "Forterial," or "Save Deckard, stay a listen while in Kane," that kind of stuff. It seems to be mostly a WoW thing. And they've announced WoW expansion packs in the past at BlizzCon, I think. I'm not entirely sure about that, and I honestly don't care. But they mentioned, as we know, Diablo 3 was announced at the Worldwide International in Paris in 2008, and Reaper of Souls was announced 2 years ago at the Gamescom. So we keep saying we're going to get it at Gamescom, and it seems likely. I mentioned on the last podcast I was training some IAMs with one of the community managers and asking about, and just said something to the effect of, if you guys are not going to announce Reaper of Souls Part 2 at Gamescom, start coming up with some good excuses. People really expect that. And the reply was something like, "We're just really focusing on patch 2.3 right now." Right. Smiley face.
Right.
But he had a nice smiley face. But, that's just like exactly what they always say. Yeah, because, they haven't given a thought to what's coming down the road. Maybe just, 2 weeks from now, who can think that far ahead, That's fair.
Yeah, that's their canned response. But at the same time, they can't tell people who are going to reveal that information. Although it could be, a great hype machine. We are all talking about it because we're kind of expecting it, but we have no inside knowledge, and they wouldn't risk it on anyone like us anyway.
And if we do, we wouldn't admit it. So 1 to 10 scale, guys. 10 is absolutely positive you will see the expansion at Gamescom, and 1 is no. Where are you, Xanth?
I would say maybe 7.5.
Wow, that was my exact number. I was going to say 7.5. I'm going to say like right around there. I think it's much more likely than unlikely. But let's go with the 7.
I would have said months ago, I was quite confident, just that they've done so much on the patches in recent months. It just seems like they're doing so much work on the game, and it's not the expansion. I mean, they added a whole new level, the whole Ruins of Sescheron thing, which admittedly has like one new monster. It's not exactly a new art thing, but it does seem like they're, they had all these pre-game leaks. We knew they were planning at least 2 expansions. They said that many times for Diablo 3, and it's been, coming up on 2 years since the last expansion, and we know they want to do them in 18 months. So they're certainly, if they're ever going to announce it, if they don't announce it now, they are like radically off the course, and who knows what they're doing. And of course, we have the whole financial issue, right, where the room in the auction house was supposed to be the ongoing source of income, and that's been gone for a year.
Yeah,
more than a year.
It's possible they could be waiting to see how those microtransactions turn out in Asia. I'm surprised they haven't implemented some type of microtransactions here, because so many games are doing it successfully nowadays.
Maybe that'll be part of the expansion.
Oh,
we all want the stash for cash from China.
Oh, definitely. And gold pickup, me never having to run back for gold? That sounds nice.
Exactly. Okay, any final thoughts, guys? Your Gamescom's in a couple of weeks. You have Excite. You got a little bit of summertime left to play. Are you pushing for a PR for Greater Rift buffs? Are you going to make a run at the end of the season, or are you just playing on the PTR and happy with that? What is your next immediate agenda?
My hope is that on Tuesday they announce that the patch is going to come out before I get back to work, which is only 3 weeks away, so it probably won't happen.
Okay, that was the worst answer ever. Go ahead, Xanth.
I'm on my last week of break, so because we start first week of August, which is always fun, but I'm probably just going to spend most of my time on the PTR. I might wander back since the Hardcore Clan just disbanded and we reformed under DII HCN, I believe. So just making sure that everybody's making the transition over, but mainly I'm spending my time on the PTR. Okay.
Thanks for your time, guys. You've been listening to the Diablo 3 podcast. We are online at diabloii.net, and PTR is going on, so we're kind of scattered along that. And between that, the clan, as Xanth mentioned the whole clan thing. We changed our URL a few months ago, and it used to be Diablo in Gamers, and now it's diabloii.net, so all of our clans are like INC something, which is kind of confusing now. So, and of course, with the awesome clan tools in Diablo 3, you can easily just change the name of your clan and know when there's seamless transition, right? Oh wait, no, you can't. There's no way to change anything and to close the whole thing down and have people rejoin. So that's always fun. But thanks for your time, guys. And moo.
Moo, 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 moo.
Moo?
Moo.
Moo?
Voodoo moo.
Moo?